We interrupt this program for a special news bulletin.
Throws toward the corner of the end zone. It is intercepted! Intercepted! The Ducks have the ball!
To the end zone! Touchdown, Oregon! Mariota dives! Touchdown! They hand it off straight out! C.J. Burdell wins the game for Oregon!
Inside the 10! A hat-trick, a touchdown from Justin Herbert!
Howard's going to run for it. Time runs out, and that'll do it! Welcome to the Big Ten, Oregon! They storm the field at Autzen!
All right, Duck fans, here we go. Welcome to another episode of the Ducks Rising podcast, sponsored by Backer and Water Ave Coffee. My name is Zachary, Neel. My co-host, Travis Rooke-Ley. Travis, what's up, man? How we doing?
Iowa week finally here. Excited to talk about it and not excited to consume it. So ready to go.
Yeah, this is one of those stressful weeks where it's just kind of that countdown to Saturday is long and pretty stressful, like you said.
I've been dreading this game since it came on the schedule, so just want to get through it with a win by one.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I hope it's more than that. I really hope it's more than that. We got a great show for you guys today. We got our good friend Dan Rubenstein coming on the show once again. We're going to dive into this Iowa game, kind of assess where the Ducks are at so far and look ahead to the upcoming schedule. Talk a little bit about the college football playoff rankings that came out last night. After that, we are going to give our Iowa predictions, dive back into our Heisman Draft that we did a few weeks ago, and kind of reassess where our teams are at. I know that one of us is feeling a lot better than the other about where things are at. So we will get to that soon. Before that, some housekeeping. No film room this week from Jeff, obviously, with the bye week, but he'll be back up next week after the Iowa game. Tomorrow for the Alumni Corner, one that I'm personally really looking forward to, Royce Freeman, the Oregon Ducks' leading rusher in program history. He's going to come on and chat with us. That should be a lot of fun. Before our interview with Dan, I want to talk briefly about the college football playoff rankings that came out last night with you. But first, we got to tell these guys once again about Backer. We're inching towards the holiday season. I got to say, I'm not sure there's a gift I would rather receive than a new Backer jacket. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, and for those of you heading out to Iowa City this weekend, heading into Autzen for USC, maybe even Minnesota on a Friday night. The weather's looking a little iffy there. I think Backer's, just like you said, the place to be. 10% off all orders using the code RISINGFREE, expedited shipping for the holidays. Just like you said, I mean, this is the type of thing that if your mom's still the type of person like mine who asks in November what you want for Christmas, I think that's the perfect answer.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's good stuff. All right, as I mentioned, let's talk college football playoff rankings. The first batch came out last night. Oregon came in at number 9, lower than they are in the AP poll and the coaches poll. They're at number 6 in both of those. Notably, Iowa at number 20, Washington at number 23, and USC at number 19, 3 of Oregon's 4 remaining games. What were your initial thoughts, initial takeaways? What'd you think?
I agree with the ranking. And at the same time, I think it's not great for Duck fans. So I think there's kind of two things at play there. I think, obviously, if you believe we're going to run the table, which is our hope, and I think if we're the team that we thought we were a couple weeks ago and thought we could have been in August, then you're going to win these 4 games. You're going to be sitting pretty at 11-1 with a nice little path for yourself. But 10-2 opens yourselves up to some iffy scenarios, especially starting at 9 right now. And I think that that's the committee just looking at our schedule and specifically looking at the games where we faced, halfway competent teams and just being not super impressed at this point. And I think that they're right in that. Me and you have discussed this and shared some of those same concerns. So my non-biased Oregon fan says we're right where we should be and we'll have plenty of opportunity to move up. But if you think we might drop one of these last 4 games, I think we're in for a bit of a stressful selection Sunday.
I agree, and I think at this point, Oregon's kind of put themselves in a position where they may have to go for some style points from here on out. It's enough to win if you're going to win all 4 games. But like you said, if you're going to drop one of those games, the way that you win the other 3 games, if you're going to finish at 10-2. Needs to be impressive. They need to show that this offense is clicking and humming. I mean, if you lose to USC, it needs to be 38-35 loss. If you lose to Washington, it needs to be a high-scoring loss. You can't be out there scoring 17 points, 21 points in a loss and lose by 10. Even if you lose to Iowa this week, like, it needs to be a hard-fought, gritty game. I feel confident that they're going to win these games. I don't know. I have trust in this coaching staff. I know that that's burnt us many times before, but I don't know. I agree. I think that they are right where they should be in the rankings. I think they've got a chance to move up. And in the end, it may be, I don't know, the playoff committee sees this as a TV show in the end. Like, I think that's what it is. Oregon's one of the biggest brands in the nation. Like, I think that they're going to want to get them in there if they can at all. It's like the same thing with Notre Dame. They're going to want to get them in there if possible. So that's one thing helping the Ducks, but I don't know. It's going to be I think a stressful last month of the season for sure.
And I think the big thing is that, like, me and you were in very much agreement at the start of the year that Oregon needed to not only make the playoff, but, like, win a playoff game for this year to be successful. And so even if we can sneak in as a 10 or 11, like, you're looking at a pretty challenging road game, probably going somewhere in the SEC. It's shaping up right now. Not that that game's unwinnable, but you just compare that to hosting a game at Autzen against maybe a Big 12 or ACC team that sneaks in. I mean, those are two completely different paths when you think about where this season could ultimately shake out. So, yeah, I mean, it's a challenging November. You have every opportunity in front of you. If you're one of those people who's adamant that Oregon is a great team and they're going to make noise in the playoff, well, then they're going to win these 4 games and they're going to be in a great spot and they're going to win those 4 games. So I don't think the people I disagree with right now in the Oregon fan base are those just like thinking that we should be ranked 6th or those thinking that 10-2 is going to get us an 8 seed. Like, it's just not. So I don't know. We have business in front of us, and we're going to learn that ultimate question is, like, is this team solid or is this team really good?
So if the standings that came out last night were to hold, which they obviously won't, there's a lot of teams that play each other over the next month, but as it stands right now, they would travel to Lubbock to play Texas Tech in the first round. And then if they win that game, they would play Ohio State. So feel good about that first round matchup. Not so good about that second round matchup, but we'll see. I mean, like we talked about with Dan, like, we're going to learn a lot about this team this coming weekend, like what they look like off of a bye. How good they can be, how good this offense can be against a good defense. So with all that being said, unless you got any other thoughts on the playoff, I think we should get into our interview with Dan because we talk about a lot of good stuff with him.
Yeah, I just think the last thing to kind of tie a bow on the playoff is, like, if you're a person like me that just wants your rooting interest going into every Saturday and wants to kind of schedule pick and stuff like that, like, I kind of went through it a little bit last night and posted some stuff on Twitter. But, I mean, it's simple, but you really just got to watch those teams below us. I think it's those 11 through 17. And if those teams take on a loss, then I think we're probably in a fine spot if we take on a loss. But your worry as a Duck fan is 10-2 SEC teams sitting out there. So a 10-2 Texas, a 10-2 Oklahoma, a 10-2 Vandy. You already have 10-2 Notre Dame that you're going to be competing with. I think our resume and, as you said, our name lines up just fine when you're going against a 10-2 ACC, a 10-2 Big 12. Like, I'd feel confident in that scenario, but it's when you're comparing it to some of those big conferences and big brands. Obviously, even, you know, we play three 2-loss teams the rest of this year. And so those teams themselves, if they were the one that beats us, also would probably be in over us. So there's definitely some rooting interest there that you can kind of follow week to week.
Yeah, we were definitely at the point of the year where it's like, all right, you're not just watching your team. You gotta be tuned into these other teams and kind of hope for some losses or hope for some wins in certain areas. So this November, man, this is I think the best month of college football. This is the conference title game races are heating up. It's gonna be a fun few weeks for sure. All right, let's pause there and get to our interview with Dan Rubenstein. A lot of good stuff coming up. Enjoy this interview. All right, ladies and gentlemen, happy to be joined today again by one of our favorite guests, Dan Rubenstein, the Solid Verbal podcast, former Oregon alum. Dan, thanks for coming on today. How are you?
Good. Still an Oregon alum. Former Oregon student. I have not given up my alumni status.
Very true.
I'm good. Very excited for a big weekend. This is, love a college football home stretch.
We're with you right there. Dan, appreciate the time as always. Kicked off the show a little bit talking about the playoff rankings. Obviously, get released yesterday, depending on when you're listening to this. Oregon comes in at number 9, lower than the AP coaches poll. What are your early thoughts on the rankings and what you saw specifically when it comes to Oregon?
It's fine. I understand the skepticism with Oregon's schedule this year, and it's not the only team that Penn State's complete crash has screwed in terms of schedule strength. And it's, true across a number of conferences, teams that have been disappointing. You got ACC teams like, Clemson and Florida State. You've got, an SEC team like Florida or Auburn that was expected to bolster strengths of schedule. And so, it's bad luck, I suppose, on Oregon's part that teams like Oklahoma State and Oregon State look to be better quality wins when those games were booked. But not much you can do other than take care of business. And Oregon finishing with Iowa this week, of course, Washington on the road, USC at home. They're in control. Oregon, if Oregon wants to be in the playoff and has the ability to win these games, they will be in the playoff. So not terribly concerned, right, that, Oregon lost to an excellent team in Indiana, whereas a couple of teams ahead of them haven't played a team of that quality, at least not yet. And so, I don't know, everything seems like it'll take care of itself.
Yeah, the question now becomes about path. I mean, like you said, you win out, you're good. If you lose a game, it gets a little bit dicey. If Oregon finishes 10-2, assuming one of those losses is to a ranked team and not Minnesota, what are your thoughts? I mean, do you think they're still in? What do you think the playoff committee? I thought that was important last night that Washington, Iowa, and USC are all ranked in the top 25. Right. I think that bodes well. But at 10-2, with one of those losses, say it's one of those three, how do you feel?
It depends to whom. It depends how. It seems unlikely, based on a very recent sample size, a very small sample size, that a 10-win team from the Big Ten doesn't make it into the college football playoff. I would assume if you're Oregon and in that situation, you're hoping for chaos across the sport. You're hoping for a lot of those teams, perhaps in the ACC, to lose 2 or 3. You're hoping for, the Big 12 to resolve itself cleanly. And, there are teams in the SEC that will end up with 1 or 2 losses. But I still maintain that if we're still talking about an Oregon team that finishes down the stretch beating Iowa and USC but losing to Washington, they should be in still decent shape. But again, you can't lose 30-7. There has to be some sort of competitive nature to a loss. And I don't foresee Oregon losing in an embarrassing way to any of those 3 teams. And if you lose to Minnesota, I suppose, at home, that's a different conversation. Minnesota has just not been all that strong this year, especially coming off of a beatdown against Iowa. So beating Iowa and losing to Minnesota would be very strange, admittedly. But, I guess it's the manner in which Oregon's season plays out, which is going to affect things the most, not necessarily just like, either or. So that's where I stand at the moment. I think this weekend will go a long way on the road to showing who Oregon is or is not coming off of a bye week.
I think the tough part with that is obviously your path is so affected depending on your 1 versus 2 losses. I mean, you look at the way things can shake out. You finish the season 11-1. You're probably looking at a 4 through 6 seed, good path to playoff, hosting a game in Autzen versus that 10-2 situation. Like, maybe you sneak into 10 or 11, you're going on the road. Your path is so different when it comes to outcomes. So for me, like, that 1 versus 2 loss distinction is just massive.
Oh, I totally agree. And I also think that if Oregon starts thinking like this internally, they'll lose 3 and it won't matter, right? That this has to be, especially, this week, and I'm sure we'll get into it, but this week, Oregon knows exactly who Iowa is. And they kind of know exactly who Washington and USC are. Like, their strengths and weaknesses are very clearly laid out. And, Iowa's sort of the inverse of those other 2 schools who are lacking defensively but have, at their best, a ton of pop on offense. And so these aren't mysterious teams. This should be an Oregon team that's prepared in these 3 games for what they'll see. This is an Oregon team who is more talented than these 3 teams, we think. Doesn't mean they're going to win all 3. It means that they should have enough advantages position group-wise across the board to plan and execute well enough to win. So it's laid out really nicely for Oregon. It's tough to win on the road in college football, especially at a place like Kinnick, especially in Seattle with the the bad blood that's always going to be there. But again, the good news is this is a coaching thing in this moment, in this home stretch, that it is obvious where these teams are vulnerable, and it is obvious the priorities of these teams. And so this November will be a referendum on Oregon's ability to prepare behind the scenes.
The last time we had you on was after the Penn State game. I think we were all riding very high.
Sure.
This team felt like a real championship contender to them. Not that they've fallen off a cliff since. You mentioned like it just happened that game doesn't look as good anymore. Maybe this is who that team was the whole time, and it just, we thought it may have looked a little different. But, their only loss comes to the number 2 team in the nation. How has your opinion kind of shifted on this Oregon team since we had you on last, since that Penn State game, since that Indiana game?
Yeah, the Penn State game, even though it was close, even though it did go to overtime, even though it was a gutty performance, all of those things are true no matter, what Penn State is or isn't. But they were at, I believe, full health when they played and have since lost their quarterback and their head coach. And it's just a different timeline right now for Penn State. Watching Oregon subsequently, the blowout against Rutgers felt like Oregon in its stride. And then there has been something about the slow starts against Indiana, against Wisconsin on offense that have been concerning, right? That these are good defenses they're playing against, but Oregon didn't seem like it came in with a confident plan. That whether it was an execution thing, whether it was a protection thing, whether it was a Dante Moore confidence thing, that it was just a different look to this Oregon offense than we saw early on in the season, as the defenses got better, of course. But they weren't even like getting 2-3 first downs and then punting it. It was kind of quickly ineffective, this Oregon offense. So that's where my concern is right now, that they were moving the ball against Penn State, albeit not scoring early on, but against Wisconsin, against Indiana. Now, Rutgers was a somewhat slow start, but then once it got going, it just went. So that would be my concern against another team with a good defense, this one on the road, that are they able to give themselves a couple of layups early to move the chains and get comfortable and relax the shoulders, relax the jaw, and set up some shot plays, maybe set up some misdirection plays. That would be the concern right now, that Oregon can come out arrhythmically on offense. Because defensively, I'm not super concerned about this Oregon defense against Iowa's offense. Iowa's offense might go down the field and have 15-play drives and just, rock 4 yards at a time on the ground, and that's successful. It's not a great formula for beating Oregon. So the idea of Iowa scoring more than 20 points and winning this game seems far-fetched to me. But, this is arguably the worst passing offense in the country. So, again, Oregon has it in front of them where they need to attack Iowa, and now it's just a matter of game planning and executing.
I want to dive a little bit into just the offense in general, Dan. I know to the point you just made, I think I saw a stat that the last first possession of the game we scored on was Oregon State, which is pretty telling. It's been a little bit. What in your mind is kind of the problem or sticking point? I know people have talked about Dante's consistency and rhythm, Will Stein, offensive line, receivers, guys getting open, kind of everything. What's your read on why this unit has been so different from kind of the ruthless efficiency we've seen the last 3 years from this unit?
Yeah, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but first downs always go a long way to determining rhythm. And so figuring out layups, figuring out like an easy rollout to Kenyon Sadiq or Jamari Johnson or something for a quick 5 or 6, right? I think that's something that helps an offense settle in. Maybe deciding on a running back rotation as well, because these are running backs that have different strengths, be it, between the tackles, be it in pass protection, be it catching out of the backfield. Like, I still think there's, Jaden Lamar has been beat up and hasn't been in that rotation, but I think there is something to like getting your running back in a rhythm, right? That like, when you see Jordan Davison ripping off 7-8 yards a gain and then don't see him for 2 drives, you're like, that was a really good way to offense, handing the ball to Jordan Davison between the tackles. And so I think we've heard running backs talk about it, former Oregon running backs talk about like the rhythm involved in playing the position. And so that's something I'd like to see tightened up even more. Like, is this a De'Aaron Hill team? Is this a Jordan Davison team? Is this a Noah Whittington team? How are we spreading out those carries? I think that's a meaningful thing. And sort of getting a quick sense of what the defense's game plan is. Now, obviously, with Iowa, we know it's that aggressive zone. Like, that's their bread and butter. So what is the plan? They're not all of a sudden going to man up every down. So what is the plan against a zone? And what are the quick adjustments that can be made if something isn't working or if a guard is getting blown off the ball, something like that? What is going to happen on almost that second drive? That's almost, to me, more important than the first drive. What does the second drive look like? Because there has been this concept, or there has been this sort of this ongoing visual of Dante Moore looking confused right away and hesitating right away and not making the right decision footwork-wise right away. That, to me, is going to go a long way of just like, how does Dante Moore look? How does the second drive look? How does the running back rotation look? And what do first downs look like in terms of getting ahead of the chains immediately?
It feels like we've said this several times this year. I know it's because it's a young team, a new team, but I think this weekend is going to tell us a lot about this team and who they are against a good defense on the road. I know it's not the first time we've said that this year.
Right.
What do you most want to see from this Oregon team on Saturday? Is it the fast start? Is it Dante looking comfortable? Is it the linebacker play? What's one thing that you're really keyed in on going into Saturday?
Just confidence from the offense, right? That they're able to stack successful plays, that they're not timid, right? That it's easy to get intimidated playing on the road at Kinnick. It's easy to get intimidated by a strong defense, which Iowa appears to have. That Oregon isn't backing down. That Oregon isn't shy. Like, I almost don't mind Dante Moore throwing an interception on a shot play, right? That I don't think Oregon can hit its ceiling if he and the passing game are timid, that they don't have a concept for where the pass rush is coming from. So I guess that's a long-winded way of saying confidence in the pass game, because I think there will be receivers open. And it's a matter to me of Dante Moore feeling comfortable looking into this defense, taking some shots, having a feel for the pass rush, which he didn't have against Indiana, and just stepping up. And if it's not there, take the 7 yards with your feet. If it is there, go for it. Don't hesitate. Just go. And you know what? If you throw an interception on a 37-yard shot downfield, so be it. I think that's what I'm looking for, passing confidence.
I think that's what's been so interesting about Moore this year. I almost like hearken it to a hoops player who needs to see a couple balls go through, who needs to get needs to get to the free throw line early in the game. He needs to rip a pass or two. And once he does that, he feels like he settles in a little bit and gets going. I mean, you've seen that against Northwestern, against Rutgers, against other games, but it's those early possessions where you see that look in his eye that you mentioned, Dan, that I think is the worry for us when we think about going into Kinnick. I want to ask you, as a Midwest guy, transplant, I know, and probably someone who's watched a lot more Iowa than most of us, what is it about Iowa playing at Kinnick, mucking up these games? Like, how do they do it? Give Oregon fans a little look into what that kind of experience is like.
Sure. Iowa is really, really good because they stick to a plan. They don't try to outplay themselves. They don't try to bomb it downfield when they know they don't have receivers. They've strung together a lot of generations of really good tight ends. Kirk Ferentz is considered to be one of the godfathers of offensive line coaching with all of his zone blocking schemes. And so, no, they're not necessarily churning out All-Americans at running back and receiver, but they're good at evaluating, they're good at developing, they're good at identifying guys who are going to play well in their specific system on defense. And they know that this is a development factory for especially offensive linemen, DBs, linebackers, and so they don't try to do anything that they are not capable of athletically or schematically. And so when you are able to stick with your bread and butter, it makes you better at bread and butter. And so that's where Iowa really jumps off. Like, they can't throw the ball all that well this year at all. And I don't think you're going to see them trying to do too much unless it's an occasional play action because they see something in terms of open space on the defense. But this is not going to be an offense that has Mark Gronowski, the South Dakota State transfer, drop back, make a bunch of go through progressions, and find a guy in rhythm. That's just not going to be it. They're going to find layups for him in the short passing game. He's a good runner, right? And so they're basically their MO on offense is stay away from 3rd and 7 at all costs. And so that's what they're going to try to do. They have a varied running game. They use the quarterback. They use the zone blocking, the wide blocking scheme that they've done forever. Kamari Moulton's a good running back, but again, against this Oregon defense, if they're prepared, and I'm looking at the linebackers specifically, like that's going to be the matchup. If Oregon's linebackers fill the gaps, then they are going to force those 3rd and 7s from Iowa, which they're trying to stay out of. So that to me is Iowa's a bread and butter program. Their fans are good. You have the cool tradition waving to the Children's Hospital after the first quarter. Like, it's as Big Ten as it gets, and if you're not ready to fight, they beat you.
Yeah, not to bring this back to basketball once again, but it kind of feels like a really good basketball college offense where, you run the UCLA offense or the motion offense, and it's like everyone knows exactly what you're doing every trip down the floor. Stop it. Like, they're going to run their zone plays. They're going to try and muck it up. You just got to try and stop it. Travis and I have talked a lot about how this game kind of has a similar feel to going into Utah in 2023. Like, it was going to be a hard place to play, a hard defense. You're going to have to get out early and just kind of win a relatively ugly game. That game went really well for the Ducks. I think it was 35-6, if I remember off the top of my head. They just dominated the game. Do you kind of have that similar feel for this one?
Sure. There is a lot similar. Especially because of what the Utah defense has been over these years and playing to a specific system and strength. I guess the interesting difference to me is I thought the Oregon offensive line that last year was probably better than where it is now in terms of consistency. And you say what you will about Bo Nix, the dude is not lacking for confidence. That he is confident and was confident as an Oregon Duck in his ability to make plays at any point on the field, at any time of the game, in any scenario. So that's why I talk about Dante Moore in this passing offense, having the confidence, having the swagger of we can do this against anybody. You trust the game plan, you trust your receivers, you trust your line, and if something is going wrong in front of you, especially at quarterback looking at the offensive line, trust the ability to adapt, right? That Will Stein adapting to the offensive line not being there, whether it's shifts, whether it's screens, whether it's rollouts, something like that. There is something similar about that Utah matchup. But again, that team played with so much confidence. And, was that a Bryson Barnes team?
I think so.
That was a Bryson Barnes team. So it was a backup quarterback at that time. There's similarities there. Utah's a very difficult place to play. So that's why I feel like Oregon has a really nice opportunity here to travel and win. And they've traveled well this season, right? The Penn State game, it was a good game. They played well on defense. They were in the backfield that whole time. Obviously, the Rutgers game was great on both sides of the ball. Northwestern was a slow start, but they opened it up, and that's a weird stadium anyway, which is no longer there, by the way. That's fully retired, the temporary stadium in Evanston.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, they go to Wrigley this month, and then they're back at regular Ryan Field next year. No, they've traveled well. They've gotten up for these games. So Oregon losing this week will not be because they're lethargic. Oregon losing will be because Iowa is more locked in, brings Oregon down to its level in terms of playing in the muck, and Oregon's not able to sustain for 4 quarters. Too many turnovers, not enough confidence, and that's that. So, no, I see the similarities. I think Oregon's in a good position. I'm curious to see what that first quarter looks like.
Dan, what's your realistic point total for Oregon to get to feel comfortable where they're winning? I've seen anywhere from 17 to 24. What are you thinking in terms of a target point for the Oregon offense where you're feeling comfortable?
I think 20. I think 20 is pretty good. It's hard for me to see Iowa scoring more than 17 in this game. I think you get to 20, 23, 24 points. I would feel pretty good if I were Oregon. Iowa has played, I'm trying to think of the legit offenses that they've played this year. They played Indiana and held them to 20, but scored, I want to say 13. Indiana took a safety at the end of that game. They played against Rutgers and gave up 30, I want to say, or 28, something like that, and won that game because the Rutgers defense is horrible, and that was on the road, so it was a good moment for Iowa. And Penn State still, I think by the numbers, has an okay offense, and Penn State nearly won that game, 24-17 or something. So if Oregon's offense is, if they have a B-plus offense against Iowa, it's hard to see them losing.
Is it the type of game that you would I was interested to hear Dan this week talk about Dan Lanning, that is our second favorite Dan.
Sure. Yeah.
Talk about how it was like going to be a field position game and a special teams game, and I'm wondering where his aggression is going to lie, because I think you can see it go both ways, to where you match a team like Iowa with your still uber aggression, or you scale it back. You're like, okay, here's an opportunity to take points. Like, we just need to get to 20. Would you lean one way or the other when it comes to that?
Yeah, I think it's probably more the latter. I think he'll still be choosy about where to be aggressive, and if there's a fake opportunity at some point or a surprise onside kick, like what he's done really well is he's shown an ability in big game, medium game, little game to go for it, right? To go for it on fourth downs in your own territory, to go for it with a fake punt, to go for it with an onside kick, to go for it with a fake field goal, whatever the case. And so you can't really plan for it because it's always a possibility. I think he's going to. I think he has learned on a certain level that in these big games, that if you force a turnover, take the points, right? That if you're going to be able to steal a possession, you don't need to be aggressive on 4th and goal from the 9-yard line if it comes after a turnover. That if it is going to be a game of field position and a possession thing, when you're able to steal one, especially that you're playing against Iowa, who doesn't have a ton of pop on offense, that they need time to score in a lot of these cases, that taking those points is not the worst thing in the world. By the way, on special teams as well, it should be noted, I think they have 3 return touchdowns, Caden Weechin. Like, that's the wild card in this game, that you feel comfortable if you can score 20, but if Caden Weechin brings back a punt or a kickoff return, that changes some of the math. And so that's another thing Oregon knows going in, that this is an elite returning team with a great returner and an all-purpose weapon in Caden Weechin, that would be something that changes the math here, I guess, along with like a pick six or something.
And that's one thing I think Oregon feels special teams is probably a strength for them, field goal kicking aside this year. I mean, James Ferguson Reynolds, their punter, has been very good. I mean, he's been a weapon for them. I don't know how many, I don't have the stats in front of me, but
and a fake weapon too.
Fake weapon too, yeah. He's a media weapon. He's been very entertaining in his press conferences and talking about his chances to be a real football player for 5 seconds at a time. So that will be interesting to see like what his impact is on this game, because I'm sure Oregon will have to punt. It's probably at least a few times in this game. They probably won't want to because Iowa's special teams are very good too. But that's flipping the field. I think is going to be really important.
Yeah, absolutely. And, if you can get Iowa playing from behind, it becomes easier. I'm not terribly concerned about falling terribly behind if you're Oregon, just because of where Iowa's offense generally is against quality teams, which is only okay. But, look, they both played Wisconsin, and Iowa blew them out. And Oregon, even with Dante Moore on the field, the passing game wasn't there, the offense wasn't there, and maybe this is a 35-7 game if Dante plays the entire time, but that's also an Oregon team with Dante Moore that'd be playing in horrendous weather in that second half. So there is the overlap of teams that, both of these teams lost reasonably close to a terrific Indiana team, and Iowa had more success against Wisconsin. Oregon had more success against Rutgers, whatever kind of measuring stick you think that is. But no, I think Oregon should be in a decent place. If it's not a terribly chaotic back and forth.
Travis, you got anything else before we get out of here?
Nope. Appreciate you, Dan, and thanks for joining us as always.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. We'll hopefully have you on sometime later this year, right before the postseason, once we get into that territory.
Yeah, that'd be great.
All right, thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, great stuff there with Dan. I want to continue talking about Iowa with you. Like we said before, like we said with Dan, very important game. I think that we've been semi-stressed about all year. I was a lot less stressed about this game from weeks 2 through 5 when I saw what Mark Gronowski looked like. But then seeing more of what Oregon looked like and kind of seeing Iowa pick things up, it's all right, this is going to be one of those games. This is going to be one of those, white knuckle games, I believe. So I don't know. What's your general sense going into this?
I mean, it's just going to be a question of what style of game, it looks like. Iowa's going to try to drag you into an Iowa game. Oregon wants to play a typical Oregon game, and which of those things will ultimately shake out? Unfortunately, I think for those of us who want it to be an Oregon game, the weather seems to be shifting a little bit and not looking super great.
What's the latest on that?
Cold and probably going to rain like somewhat throughout the game. Okay. So I think that just naturally lends itself a little more to what Iowa wants to do. It opens up more opportunities for the game to get weird, balls slipping around, guys slipping around, which is all part of the Iowa experience, I suppose. So I think it's just a question of like which game flow do you get into, and I know we'll talk about that in a little bit, but Iowa wants to make it clunky. They want to make it slow. They want to limit possessions. Oregon wants the opposite. This game is going to be completely different depending on if it would be Oregon who jumped out 10-0 or Iowa 10-0. Like, the game is completely different in those two ways, and that's how Iowa wins games, is building a lead and be able to run their offense kind of similar to a Stanford team that we had seen over the years. So for me, it's the first three possessions of the game. It's like, what do we do on our first three possessions will tell us a lot about how stressful this game's ultimately going to be.
I think what really gives me a lot of pause and a lot of stress and concern is just our linebackers. Like, that's been a sticking point all year, that defense as a overall unit has been really good. They have been the weak spot in that defense, and we've talked to Jeff a lot about what we would give to see linebackers go just meet a back in the hole and not get pushed back 3 to 4 yards. Like, would be something special. Iowa's good at that. I mean, they run a lot of outside zone. Like we talked with Dan, like exactly what their game plan is coming into this game. You know exactly what they're going to do. Can you stop it? I think if they came in, like, I have no questions about Oregon's defense going against the USC because they like to pass the ball. Oregon is really good at stopping the pass. I've got some questions about going against Iowa because they like to run the ball, and Oregon's weak spot on defense has been stopping the run so far. And their weak spot is, you got to be generous with that. They're, I think, 34th in the nation or something like that. I've gotten written down. They're not terrible. They're fine. But I don't know. It's just that's the biggest thing for me. I want to see through the first quarter what's Iowa's yards per carry looking like. I mean, are they able to pick up 5-6 yards on the ground per play, move the chains, and just kind of eat the clock? Yards per carry, and how many offensive possessions did Oregon have? I mean, if it's 1 or 2, then I'm a little bit scared, okay? Because I want to see them getting the ball a lot. I don't know. This is a game where you're going to be able to do that.
Yeah, I mean, a couple things on that. I think that, one, I mentioned it before, but if you can score early and get a little bit of a lead, it makes Iowa's ability to just, 3 yards in a cloud of dust you to death a lot harder for them. So you scoring is the ultimate thing that will help your run defense, because no matter how much they want to stick to it and stick to their plan, like if you're in a 2-score hole, you cannot run the play clock down every possession and get 4 yards and then 3 and then 1 and then 2. Like, it just doesn't work to play offense like that if you're behind. So the offense needs to help in that regard. And then secondly, I hope we see a little bit of scheme difference when it comes to what Dan and Tosh do. You have to make them beat you through the air. And I know teams have done this against Iowa, and they've still been able to run the ball. But please just make them. Like, I would love to see our safeties down in the box from early in the game. I'd love to see us do some 5D lineman looks. Like, there are ways to scheme around having linebackers that are your worst unit. Put 5D linemen in the game. Put Dylan Thieneman in the box. Put Kingston Lopa in the box. If they hit on their first drive offensively a 75-yard touchdown pass on Brandon Finney, I will congratulate them, and I will not be happy, or I will not be disappointed. I don't think any Duck fan will. Like, okay, we'll adjust. Like, if they start beating us through the air, we can adjust. It's just coming out and having to adjust to what we know that they will do will frustrate me, because we all know what they will do. Dan mentioned it. We mention it. Everyone knows what's going to happen. So, I just want to see them prove that their wide receivers can beat our DBs. And if they can do that, then you adjust.
Yeah, man up outside, put those young cornerbacks on an island, because I think we both feel confident they will stick up. Like, they will stand up against that competition, but just load that box. Get 8 men in the box. Get 9 men in the box if you need to. Make Mark Gronowski throw the ball. I'm also curious to see how he's able to find success with his legs, Gronowski. Oregon has not always been the best at stopping running quarterbacks. That's kind of been a struggle, not just this year, but over years past. And obviously that's different teams, different units. But he's someone who runs the ball a lot. I don't know I forget how many touchdowns he has right now with his legs. A couple weeks ago when I looked, it was 7. I don't know if
a lot more than he has with his arm.
Yes, a lot more than with his arm. So that's just another thing. I mean, their running game in general just includes him. So he's an extra man on the field, an extra hat you got to account for. But let's talk about game flow. I think you already mentioned a little bit. You feel really confident if they do what? Come out looking confident and hot in the first 3 drives?
Yeah, I mean, just scoring early. It's just like setting the tone that our offense is in a rhythm. Our offense is comfortable. We're having success. We're finishing drives, unlike against like a Penn State, for example. So I just think that that's going to dictate so much of what our defense can do and how much success our defense can have is how comfortable that offense looks early in the game. I think it avoids you getting in situations where you're punting to their special teams unit that have a lot of success. I mean, in terms of just like what Iowa wants to do, their entire plan is predicated off just like slowing down offenses, slowing down games, shortening possessions, shortening the overall game. So to me, those first 3 drives, Oregon's got to come out and score, and Dante has to get in a rhythm.
Well, that's why we compare this to the Utah game, because even with the Ducks versus them, like you saw Lanning say, like, I hope they give us the ball first because I want to go out and score right away. Dan was asked earlier this week, like, how important is a hot start for you guys? He surprised me with his answer. He said it's important, but it's not the most important thing. Like, doing all of the little things is the most important thing. Like, finding answers to their little things. I heard that. I was like, I don't know. This seems like a game where you need to take the ball first. You need to score, and that's going to open up everything else for you. So I agree. Getting points on the first drive, even if it's a field goal. If it's a field goal, I'd honestly be pretty excited because that doesn't happen all the time for Oregon, just making field goals. So
yeah, I mean, just moving the ball, having success, just like holding up on that side of the ball, I would say in general. We've just seen too many times early in the games like this unit just like feel clunky, and I think things have tumbled from that. So that early success will be massive. And then yeah, I mean, that I referenced it with Dan Rubenstein, but that I kind of disagreed with Dan's stance on things when it comes to like a special teams. I just think that's Iowa-ifying the game, and I don't want to be dragged into that. Like, I hope Dan stays aggressive. I hope we look for opportunities to like go for it on 4th down. I hope that we look for opportunities to continue to possess the ball. If we turn the ball over at the 45, like, we should trust our defense can hold up. Like, I hope we're not just suddenly shifting into a different offensive attack and a different mindset when it comes to kind of playing into their game a little bit there.
Yeah, I agree. Score predictions, like, I don't know. What do you feel for this one? I kind of think it's going to be a little bit higher scoring than other people seem to think, but I definitely could be wrong.
I had 2017 Oregon.
Okay.
The biggest part I feel worried about that is I know I'm predicting 2 field goals, which is against my nature, but yeah. I think there will be opportunities down in the red zone maybe where we need to take points. You know, this is a type of game, we talked about it, Penn State, and obviously it worked out in our favor, but I think it's the type of game where like you're up 7 and it's 4th and 2 at the 5, and like I probably want you taking 3 there. Just to take the 2 possession lead. So I think there'll be some opportunities inside, maybe you know the 20 where Sappington hopefully can pull through. But I don't know. I'm expecting a grinder. I
agree. I'm choosing to believe in the coaching staff and what we think is a very talented team. I'm going 28-17. Like I think this Oregon offense is good. Like I don't think that should be a crazy opinion either. I think that they're going to be able to score points. I think that they'll find some ways to throw the ball. I know the weather is getting worse, the projection, and that's kind of tempering my expectations, but I'm still going to stay with my 28-17. I think that they can do this. Tough place to play, but I don't know. Going into the year, we thought this was a really good team. We've seen several times throughout the year this be a really good team. I think the bye week helps. I think this team knows they need to prove a lot. And in the past, when they've been put in a prove-it situation, they've stepped up. So, Yeah, I think they win. I think they cover. I think they win in a relatively comfortable fashion.
And that's the thing about this game is everyone who is picking a close game like me or Iowa is just expecting that Iowa is going to be able to drag us into that game. And there's a very real world in which Oregon just says, nope, we're just going to play really well. We're the much better team. We're the much better roster. And we're just going to win easily. A la 2023 Utah, many other games, exactly. That score of a game. So, like, no one out there is saying that Iowa is better. No one out there is saying that they have more talent really anywhere, maybe O-line. So it's all predicated off this belief that Iowa can turn this into the type of game they need it to be. So maybe they will. But there's obviously plenty of scenarios and plenty more scenarios where Oregon can win this game than Iowa can. Like, Iowa's path is much more narrow.
Absolutely. They have so many more ways to win this game. That's often what it boils down to. I completely agree. All right, any other thoughts on Iowa before we get to our Heisman draft?
No, I'm as you mentioned at the top, I'm fired up to talk a little Heisman given where things are standing, so let's do it.
Yeah, I think we could almost skip this segment. But all right, let's get to our Heisman draft. Before we do that, I once again want to shout out Water Ave Coffee. Really, really good stuff. I continue to enjoy this stuff more and more every day. They're a great sponsor. I'm glad we picked them up.
Encourage fans to go to OregonDucksCoffee.com. 3 different lines they have there right now. They got a light, a medium, a dark. I don't know if they do the same for you, but they kind of send me a random different one every week. I know my girlfriend Molly, she's a dark roast gal. I'm a little softer than her, so I tend to lean to the other two. But plenty of options, super cool designs. All the designs are based off of like old Oregon uniforms. I know they got a couple other special designs coming here in the works soon. So holidays coming up. Encourage fans to check that out. OregonDucksCoffee.com.
Yeah, it's great stuff. All right, the dreaded Heisman draft for one of us. Just to recap, Travis's team is looking a lot better than mine right now. Travis has Jeremiah Smith, Haynes King, Fernando Mendoza, Marcel Reed, and Julian Sayin. 4 of the top 6 in terms of betting odds for FanDuel Sportsbook. My team is Dante Moore, Carson Beck, Arch Manning, Ty Simpson, and... Wait, did I drop someone? I forget who else I had, because I wrote down 2. Who's my 5th guy? Do you remember?
It must not be anyone good. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I must have deleted someone. I don't care who they were. I think I might have had...
Arch?
No, I mentioned him. Dante, Carson, Arch, and Simpson. I didn't take Mateer, did I?
Beck.
That's a problem. Oh, no, I mentioned him. Dante, Carson Beck, Arch Manning, Ty Simpson. We have 5, right? That's only 4. Either way, I'm dropping. Like, we could just... Are you making any moves?
Nope, I'm good.
Okay, damn it. I'm dropping Carson Beck as quickly as possible.
Come on.
I'm dropping him as quickly as possible. Although I do love that I have to drop him. Like, just in the grand scheme of things, I think it's very fun for Oregon fans and for us that this is happening.
The highlight of my last weekend was that that overtime interception. I was almost in tears. I was laughing so hard when he threw that pass. So
that was we actually didn't talk about my Twitter getting hacked. That was the last tweet I sent before I got hacked. I was like, I bumped my tweet from 2 weeks earlier saying like, oh my gosh, Carson, what are you doing? And then my whole
went out with a bang.
Crazy. Yeah, it did. It's funny because in like the recovery process, they ask you to provide your last tweet. And I was like, oh, this is funny. This is just as a providing like that it's you. I was like, yeah, this is good. I will drop Carson Beck. I'm going to add Diego Pavia, Vanderbilt quarterback. There's not many good options.
You got a lot cooler in terms of just likability and people in general, so take that.
Man. And then there's just like, it's kind of a problem. Like, I don't know who else I should drop because I'm kind of going under the assumption that I already dropped someone. Because I don't know who they were.
You got the whole field to take.
So basically,
I feel super
have
great where I'm at.
Yeah, I have one spot to fill, and I guess I'm gonna take. Do I go down the board? No. I'm going to
I
take
know you had
Gunner.
Aguilar at some point.
Is that who it was? Did I drop him?
Just say you had him.
Yeah, well, I'm dropping him, and I'm going to take Gunner Stockton and whatever, just because it's a roster spot. That's a bad team.
Hey, I mean, if Georgia runs the rest of the table and is 11-1, and Stockton plays well, he very easily could be in New York. So, I think that's the smart pick, even though you're still going to lose.
If I had wheels, I would be a bicycle. Yeah. All right. Anything else on Heisman Draft, or do you want to get? Do you have time for Airwaves? I know you got to get out of here soon.
Yeah,
We can
let's
wrap
do
it
a
up
couple
here,
real
we can
quick.
do Airwaves. Okay.
Yeah, let's do Airwaves. We've got a couple questions here. Actually got a good chunk of questions, so I'll be a little bit choosy. First question from Lane here. What is the most glaring weakness to this Oregon team this year, personnel-wise and staff-wise? Maybe we just stick to the personnel question.
I mean, we talked about it earlier. It's linebacker. Like, this was the question coming into the year. It looked good early on. I don't really know what happened to Jerry Mixon. He looked really good early on, and then he's kind of just, I wouldn't say fallen off, but just not been as explosive. But yeah, linebacker, I think, is the biggest weakness on this team, at least defensively. Offensively, maybe offensive line, but they've still been pretty solid.
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, maybe if you want to talk offensive line, just like continuity of offensive line in general. And I think we knew that coming into the year, and that's obviously the reason why you never want to have to portal 3 guys. But I think just it hasn't been the whole unit playing poorly. It's more so just like down to down. You've seen little things, especially on the right side. Occasionally whirled with some strength stuff on the left side. So I think just like the lack of continuous work that group has had, I think has just led to some of those struggles there. And then anytime you're obviously breaking in a new QB with that and just like on new playmakers, I think that's just led to some of the, blitz pickup stuff and some of the stunts that teams have had success with. So I think that's a good call there. Well, that's just a given.
That's just any year at Oregon.
Why would you expect anything less? Are we as fans and media blowing the Indiana loss out of proportion? The CFP Rankings essentially told us that we're fine if we went out. The committee doesn't believe we have quality wins. How much of the doubt about this team's talent is because of that Indiana game?
So blowing it out of proportions and saying that it was worse than it was, or it wasn't as bad as it was?
I think implying it's like that's what's tanking us all the way to number 9. Is
that was a fine loss?
Well, no, I think more so saying like we're all the way at 9 and we just have one loss and we easily could have won that game.
Yeah, I struggle to say we easily could have won that game. I mean, yes, we could, but I feel like we both thought we came out of that game and just got beat. It's not like there was a couple calls that went against us. I don't know. It's not the worst loss to have on your resume, but I think we both agree that 9 feels kind of accurate for where this team should be. This is not a top 5 team in the nation right now. This is not I think they are a top 10 team, but closer to 10 than number 5. So I don't know. What do you feel?
I do agree about Indiana outplaying us. I just think there's a lot of first half stuff in that game that could have changed that game in a lot of ways. Yeah. And it leads me to be pretty confident that if this bracket shakes out the way it could and we meet them in a neutral site in the second round, like I'd feel pretty good going to that game. So I do think like obviously Indiana has garnered a ton of respect. I don't think anyone's viewing that as the bad loss that's tanking us. I think it's more so that we just haven't really looked good for a while now. I just think the Penn State loss has changed the perception a little bit from, wow, what an amazing team to go into Happy Valley and win against a really good opponent, arguably the best win of the season yet, to now being like, decent win.
I mean, we were talking that was one of the best wins of Flanning's career.
Yeah.
Now it's like, oh, that game is not even the best win of the season. I've also found it very funny that Oregon fans are now like, man, Indiana, just wait till we get them on a neutral field. Like, we had them at home. We couldn't get them. Wait till we get them on a neutral field. That's just always like, yeah, okay, we'll see. I agree. I think if they played them again, they could do it again, or do it this time. But it's just comical.
All right, question here. I'm curious if you agree with me that there are major parallels between this game and last year's game at Michigan. Intimidating road environment, very good defense, quarterback who can't pass very well and always wants to run the ball.
hadn't thought about that one. I just think that Iowa's a bit better and more established. Michigan just didn't seem as established because they'd lost so much from the year before. New coach. I feel like I'm giving more respect to Iowa in this game than I did to Michigan. Like, I didn't have any concerns really about that Michigan game last year. I've got concerns. I think that's both because of who this team is and what we've seen from them so far, and just the respect I'm giving to Iowa.
Yeah, I think just overall, probably a little bit better of a defense than Michigan had last year, like better special teams. And I also, like, the Big House is not hostile. I was there last year.
Yeah.
I mean, it just isn't. Like, it was not loud at all. It was not intimidating. Like, it was cool, and I'm sure the players were fired up to be in it, but that game played the crowd played zero role in the game. And I just don't think that, I think by all means Kinnick will be more challenging.
Where do you think Kinnick kind of ranks, like, nationally? Like, they're not, all due respect, they're not Autzen. They're not, like, Death Valley. They're not, I mean, are they kind of like Lubbock, Texas Tech? Like, where would you put them, like, in the realm of national stadiums that you think are a challenging, like, they're not, obviously not Penn State.
Yeah, I think it's there, like, in that second tier. If I just think about other Big Ten schools, like, I'd probably compare it to, like, a Wisconsin.
Like in Nebraska, maybe?
Yeah, yeah. I've been to both of those, and I think that's smart. I think that's good. I mean, I thought Wisconsin was far and away a better environment than Michigan last year, just in terms of everything, but also just like crowd noise, intimidation, stuff like that. So I'm not going this weekend, so I can't speak on it, but I think I think that's kind of a good sweet spot to be, is right in that range.
Okay.
All right, we got a lot this week, so we'll put off a couple to next week, but I want to do one more because I think it's a good question from Andrew. What's more expensive, a stud out of the portal, retaining your own stud, or a stud high school prospect?
What's more expensive, or which would you rather do?
What's more expensive? And I feel like I can answer this pretty
Go for it.
solidly. Definitely a stud high school prospect.
Really,
and it's because it's because you're getting them for ideally 3 to 4 years. So I think if you're looking at an average, like, year-to-year basis, just like what does it cost for 1 year, I think that maybe the like high-end portal prospects, specifically like a QB or a high-need position, could maybe get close to that. But I think for the most part, like prep, QB, tackle, edge is your highest price point.
Maybe don't answer this if you don't want to or are not able to, but like Dylan Thieneman versus Jet Washington, like, is that like a good comparison for like great transfer safety versus prep safety? Like, comparing those price points, I don't know if you even know the price points, but that's something I'd be interested to see.
Yeah, I mean, what I'll just say about that is I stick to my original answer. I think prep is generally going to come in a little bit higher based upon what you're getting for them over the period of time. But I also think that when our coaches make these decisions, you have to consider hit rate. And one thing that we've gotten over and over again is why hit 40% out of the high school rankings when you can hit 90% out of the portal. And we've legitimately hit 90% out of the portal. I mean, you look at our portal haul of the last 3 years, and it is crazy. And the guy we felt best about, Mekhi Hughes, is like the one that takes the percentage. So I think that there's a lot that goes into it, and I think when you couple the fact that generally prices might be a little lower combined with the hit rate being twice as high, you can see why the staff would target certain guys in certain positions in that way.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, based on this conversation alone, it's like it's easy to see where you would rather go for these studs. Like, yeah, build your depth, build your roster from the high school ranks, get your blue chip guys. But for the little cherries on top, like, go to the portal and pay those guys when you feel very confident that they're going to hit, instead of giving more money to someone you're less confident about.
Yeah, but it's all a balance. I mean, you have to remember, and it's why signing a guy like Emmanuel Iheanacho at tackle is worth every dollar you're going to spend on him, and you absolutely have to get him to campus because you don't want to be caught in a situation like this year where you're forced to bring in 2 portal tackles. You never know who's going to jump in. You never know how those guys are going to gel. Like, there are certain positions specifically, like offensive line, where you've got to invest and bring guys in at the prep level.
Yep, completely agree. All right, let's wrap it up there. Just another reminder that we've got our alumni corner coming out later this week with Royce Freeman. Really looking forward to that one. And then we'll be back next week. Jeff's film room will come out after the Iowa game, and we'll get going with that. Travis, you got anything else to add before we get out of here?
Nope, looking forward to this weekend. We're going to find a hell of a lot out about this team, and we're either going to be, the way I talk about it with my friends every week is like, I hope I just want to tune in to next week's ranking show, because I'm not such a paid, devoted person like you covering the Ducks. I can only tune in when I'm a fair weather fan and they actually win. So, hoping for another week.
Yeah, that rating shows. We don't need to talk about it. It's not the best content out there. I tune in for the actual rankings and then just turn it off because I don't care what any of them have to say about where people are.
I don't know what your thoughts on Andy and Ari are, or some of these other people, but I would highly recommend the old mute of ESPN and just follow whoever you like in the podcast world live. Because yes, listening to Booger and Joey tell me that A&M is far and away the number one team in the country gets a little tiresome.
Dan Rubenstein and Ty Hildenbrandt, they need to do their live reaction shows. I would absolutely tune into that at the Solid Verbal. That would be great content.
We'll let them know.
You can check us out on YouTube, find the Ducks Rising podcast on Apple or Spotify, and if you'd be so kind, give us a rating and a review. You can follow me on social media. Thankfully, after I got my Twitter back, at Zachary C. Neel. Follow Travis at Travis Rooke-Ley. But most importantly, go over to Lockerverse and check out Ducks Rising. Subscribe now and support the program. Let's rise together. We'll see you guys next week.